History has a strange way of repeating itself. Tanks, troops, and tension are back on Europe's frontier, and once again, the world's two biggest powers are staring each other down. For months, whispers spread through intelligence circles and military analysts. NATO was quietly reinforcing its eastern flank. Moscow was warning of unpredictable Western aggression. The tension grew thick enough to taste, and now with 4,500 elite US troops positioned on the Poland-Ukraine border, the whispers have turned into thunder. It started with a familiar phrase, temporary rotation. The Pentagon loves that term. It sounds harmless, like a business trip with camouflage. But what's happening? In southeastern Poland doesn't look temporary. Satellite images show convoys of American armored vehicles rolling across narrow village roads, artillery units setting up in open fields, and radar trucks establishing communication grids near the frontier. Among them are soldiers from the 82nd Airborne Division, America's rapid response elite. When they move, the world pays attention. Their stated mission is simple: to reassure NATO allies and deter any Russian escalation beyond Ukraine's borders. But reassurance isn't always subtle. It looks like Humvees rumbling through farmland, helicopters cutting through the Polish sky, and the constant hum of drills that remind everyone that peace here is temporary. We're doing a giveaway for a $200 Amazon gift card when we hit 1,000 subscribers. Make sure to smash that subscribe button and comment below so we know to add you into the raffle. Thanks and best of luck to everyone who enters. Thank you. To understand why this moment matters, you have to zoom out and look at what's happening inside Russia's western borders. The war in Ukraine has dragged on far longer than the Kremlin expected. What was once framed as a quick special operation has turned into a years-long quagmire, with high casualties, exhausted soldiers, and international isolation. Ukraine, backed by Western intelligence and firepower, has pushed back harder than anyone thought possible. Every Russian setback has triggered a new escalation: missile strikes, air raids, and veiled threats aimed not just at Kyiv, but at NATO itself. Washington sees this troop movement as necessary insurance, but in Moscow, it's interpreted as a threat, a chess piece moving too close to the king. Kremlin officials wasted no time condemning the deployment, calling it an aggressive act, and warning that it would not go unanswered. Russian state media amplified the message, spinning the troop presence as evidence that the United States was preparing for direct involvement in the conflict. For seasoned observers, the situation feels eerily familiar. It mirrors a moment in history many hoped would never return: the Cold War standoff of 1983, when NATO's Able Archer exercises convinced the Soviet Union that a real nuclear strike was imminent. Back then, both sides stood on the edge of annihilation without realizing how close they'd come. Now in 2025, the pieces are moving in unsettlingly similar patterns. Once again, NATO is massing forces near Russia's borders. Once again, Moscow is responding with dark rhetoric and aggressive drills. The only difference is that this time, there's a real war raging right next door. The United States insists that these troops are stationed purely for deterrence to prevent Russia from pushing beyond Ukraine and into NATO territory. But deterrence is a dangerous game. Every show of strength risks being read as a show of aggression, and this deployment isn't made up of support staff or administrative units. These are paratroopers, combat engineers, and mechanized infantry, men and women trained to move first, strike fast, and operate in hostile territory within hours. That's not symbolism, that's readiness, and Russia knows it. Within days of the deployment, the Russian Defense Ministry announced countermaneuvers near its western borders and in Belarus. Iskander missile systems and S-400 air defense units were repositioned. Fighter jets began flying more aggressive patrols. Russian media described it as a defensive response to NATO provocation. But the message behind the move was clear: Moscow wasn't going to be caught off guard. This new front of tension is testing not only Russia and the US, but also Europe's nerves. Poland, once a cautious NATO member focused on rebuilding its economy, has become the alliance's new military bulwark. Over the past 3 years, Poland has doubled its defense budget, bought hundreds of American Abrams tanks, and signed deals for cutting-edge fighter jets from Korea and the US. It's no longer just a NATO ally, it's the eastern wall of Europe's security. For Poland, the arrival of US troops isn't just protection, it's affirmation. It confirms its place as the frontline defender of Europe, but that status comes with a heavy price. Every American convoy that rolls through its roads also paints a bigger target on its map. The closer Poland aligns with Washington militarily, the more it risks being the first to feel the consequences of any Russian retaliation. Russia, for its part, has leaned on familiar tactics: military posturing, cyber interference, and disinformation. In Kaliningrad, the heavily armed Russian enclave wedged between Poland and Lithuania, live fire drills began almost immediately after the US deployment. Russian bombers conducted simulated nuclear missions, while naval units in the Baltic Sea staged sudden readiness exercises. Every move seemed choreographed to send a warning: "We're watching you." But beneath all the rhetoric lies something more dangerous: miscalculation. The skies above Eastern Europe are now busier than ever. NATO surveillance aircraft, US drones, and Russian fighters share the same airspace, separated only by invisible lines and fragile rules of engagement. One radar error, one stray drone, one misunderstood maneuver could ignite an international incident that spirals out of control before anyone has time to react. Across Europe, reactions to the buildup are split. In Western capitals like Berlin and Paris, leaders urge caution, afraid that too much muscle flexing could escalate into open conflict. But in the East, in Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, the mood is defiant. They've lived under the shadow of Russian power before. To them, showing restraint only invites more aggression. They see the American deployment not as a provocation, but as a promise that this time, if the Kremlin pushes west, it won't be met with silence. The divide between Western and Eastern Europe runs deep, shaped by history, geography, and trauma. The West fears escalation, the East fears abandonment, and the United States stands in the middle, trying to balance deterrence with diplomacy. But make no mistake, this deployment carries more than just military significance. It's a message to Moscow and to the world: America is not stepping back from Europe. For years, critics accused Washington of turning its focus toward Asia, leaving Europe to fend for itself. This move flips that narrative. It shows that the US can still project power on two fronts, East and West, without losing control. To Russia, however, it looks like encirclement. The Kremlin sees a tightening ring of NATO bases, missile systems, and alliances closing in from all directions. To them, every troop movement near their border isn't a defense, it's an invasion waiting to happen. And that's the most dangerous mindset of all, when both sides believe they're the ones acting defensively. So where does this lead? Experts suggest a few possible paths, none of them entirely safe. The first is a prolonged standoff, a modern echo of the Cold War, where both sides maintain high alert but avoid direct confrontation. It's tense, expensive, and exhausting, but it keeps the peace, barely. The second possibility is the nightmare scenario: accidental escalation. A drone crosses into the wrong airspace, a pilot misreads radar data, a missile defense system locks onto the wrong target. Wars have started over less. And then there's the third option, the one everyone hopes for but few expect: diplomacy, quiet talks, secret back channels, de-escalation agreements that pull both sides back from the brink. But right now, neither Washington nor Moscow seems ready to blink first. At its core, this crisis isn't just about borders or troops. It's about perception. The United States wants to project stability to show its allies that it's still the global protector. Russia wants to project defiance, to prove it can't be bullied into submission. Both sides are playing to their audiences, both domestic and global, and neither can afford to look weak. It's a dangerous feedback loop. The stronger one side appears, the more threatened the other feels. The more threatened it feels, the more it arms itself. It's not a strategy, it's a spiral. And as always, the real cost will fall on the people caught in between. The villagers in eastern Poland who now live beside foreign convoys, the Ukrainian civilians under constant threat, and even the Russian families watching their sons get sent to a war that never seems to end. For now, the world holds its breath. The troops remain stationed, the artillery silent, the diplomats busy. The hope is that all this power gathered on Europe's frontier will stay as a deterrent, nothing more. But everyone knows how quickly deterrence can turn into disaster. All it takes is one misstep, one spark, one human error in a world full of weapons designed to erase mistakes instantly. The border between Poland and Ukraine has become more than a line on a map. It's a pressure point for the entire planet, a place where history, ambition, and paranoia collide. On one side stands the most powerful military alliance in history. On the other, a nuclear superpower convinced it's being cornered. And in the middle, the thin, trembling promise that cooler heads will prevail. For now, Russia remains on high alert. The US troops remain where they are, and the world waits, watching closely, knowing that when two giants stand this close to the fire, it only takes one wrong move for the entire world to feel the heat. If you found this analysis insightful, don't forget to stay tuned for our next video. And as always, remember to watch, subscribe, and stay curious because the story of global power is never really over.